Hey guys, how's it going? Black Boy here. Today we are going to jump right back into something I started a couple of weeks ago but wasn't able to actually dive full in. And that is how I record drums. So sit back, relax, and let's get into it. So as you guys can see right here, I have a snare drum. And today we will be focusing on how I record snare. Now, before I dive into this, I just want to say a couple of things. First off, that normally I don't break my set up into individual pieces to record. This is just more along the lines of demonstrating how I set things up to record, how I go about recording this individual piece, i.e. today, the snare. But I will break down how I do cymbals, the bass drum, and I will group the toms all together. I will go about how I record each one of those groups individually, and then at the end I'll do this big one thing on how I mix and master. But I just wanted to do it individual so that way it's a lot easier for you guys to see my techniques and what I do. And yeah. All right, guys. So the whole reason why I am showing you guys this, why we are talking about how I record drums, is because for some people, they cannot record drums. Whether or not they live in an apartment complex, or they don't have drums, or they just don't know about, or they just don't know how to go about doing it. It is okay. We all start from zero from time to time, or we all start at ground zero. We're all going to make mistakes, and we all are going to grow and learn as we go through life. But before we go any further, guys, if you like what I'm doing, if you're very interested in seeing what I am going to do and how all my other stuff come up, if you want to know more, why don't you go ahead and click that like and subscribe button down bottom. I'm trying to reach 500 subscribers. Any help you guys can give me, really, 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 I am so grateful and I'm so appreciated. But anyways, let us continue. So, drums are not as easy to record as guitars, bass, and vocals. There are a lot of moving elements, a lot of pieces, and there are a lot of things you have to do. Now, I want to start with the snare drum. And that is because the snare drum, to me, is one of the most, if not the most important part of the drum set. A lot of people can identify the snare sound in the mix in any song, but I digress. There are many different ways that people record their snare, and I like to use a 2-microphone method. Now, what does that mean? It means I use 2 microphones to record snare drums. Pretty self-explanatory. I use a top mic, which you guys can see right here, and I use a bottom mic, which you guys can see right here. Now, when it comes to recording anything, whether it be drums, vocals, guitars, bass, saxophone, trumpet, whatever, you want to make sure you get the sound right from the source, which is the first reason why I use 2 different microphones or 2 mics, is because it's a lot easier to get the full sound of the snare. Now, as I stated before, the snare is the most important piece. This, I believe, is a 16-inch. Hold on. Let me check really quickly. All right, so this is a 14-inch snare. Dive right into it. First, we'll talk about my microphones. And I am using 2 different microphones, as I stated before. I have a microphone set, a drum mic set from Toman, which is a T-bone set. And this is right here, my top mic is one of their snare slash tom mics. It's designed to do both. One of the cool things I like about this is that it's designed to do both. So I don't have to specifically always be using this specific mic. I could use one of the other ones on the toms. If I have to take my mics off, because I like leaving my drum set mic'd up all the time. But if for some reason, if I have to take off the mics, I can just use this. I can just grab any one of the 4 tom/snare mics to put it on my snare. And so I'm using this one to on the top head. And this gives it, I believe the top head gives you more of the loud bladder, the loud whack and all that dissonance. I could be wrong, but yeah. And then I use a mic to record the bottom part of the snare drum. And that mic, as you guys might be able to see right here, is an SM57. Tried and true microphone. This one, when it's on the bottom, captures the snares, which gives it that more, excuse me, which gives it that more tingy and more unique sounding style. And then when you blend these two together, that's when you really get a good full snare sound. Now for today, or just in general, my signal flow is very simple. Mics into my mixer right here, which is, like I said, why I needed to get a new mixer. This, as you guys know, is the Behringer X2442 USB. And I normally run my snare mic into my first 2 channels. So I got my channels, I got the mics plugged in, and we are ready to start getting a good sound tone for the snare. Now, oh, hold on, it's getting hot. Let me take my hoodie off. All right, so, oh yeah. So the first thing you want to do always, you want to get your levels right. You want to check your levels. Now, I'm going to do this just like how they do it at live shows and anything like that, one mic at a time. And I start from top to bottom. All right, so I got my mixer all set up right here, and we got the top mic plugged in to channel 1. So what we're going to do is we're going to take our drumstick and we're just going to give it some good whacks. And while whacking it, we are going to increase the gain. And that will bring up the volume on the mixer. That will allow me to dial everything in and get it right, because you want to get it right on the board first. So you want to get it all right here first before sending it out to your computer. So let me go ahead and, oh, someone's at my door. Hold on. Oh, well, that was, oh, didn't mean to do that. Ugh. That, put you in here for now. All right. Sorry about that. UPS came, dropped off this big box for me. Very funny though. I had to pay with a check. I've literally never written out a check in like 15 years, so I had to remember how to do that. But anyways, stay tuned for that. All right. So let's go ahead and let's put on the headphones so that way I can hear what I'm doing. Now, normally, I would never set up my mix so close to the actual drum set. I don't have my mixer. They're always in separate rooms. But because it's just me today, I got to work with what I got. So I'm going to start off by having the gain at, let's just say 9 o'clock. Send this to the main. Let's see if I can hear it. Let's turn my fader up. All right. So let's put this fader up to, I'm going to put this fader to about 16. So 15 is right there. Slide the line right there. See? Still not hearing anything. So let's put this gain up to noon. All right. Now I can hear it in my headphones. I'm going to push this a little bit higher. Now, I'm adjusting the gain because this is the input. The fader is what is being sent and everything like that. So, yeah. So, we're going to work our way down. I am going to engage the low cut. Oh, it was already engaged. Engage the low cut. So that way, it cuts out all of the low end. Very important. You don't want a lot of things taking up the low end that don't need to be in the low end. Snare, toms, cymbals. You don't need a lot of low end for that stuff. Because it'll muddy up the bass drum and the bass. So yeah. So now we're going to throw a little compressor on here. And I'm going to start off with about 10. I like the sound of that. Now, like I said, it's very hard as of right now just because of the proximity effect. But I would normally go about doing this and adjusting it to taste just a little bit more. Yeah, I'm liking that. And then we're not going to deal with the EQ right now. So that is set. And I'm going to note where this is. This is kind of like 1. I'm just going to back this down a bit. And then we're going to start doing the same thing on channel 2, which, as I said, is the lower mic, under mic. So I'm going to probably start this one off at noon. And let's also bring this fader up to 16. 16 is a great starting point for having your faders because it's just loud enough to pick everything up, but not so loud that it's going to wash everything out. So here we go. Oh yeah. Now, here, let me show you guys what's going off on my mixer. So we got the mixer up, as you guys can see. And let me go ahead and just give it a few whacks. Let's do some rim shots. Okay, hit the rim. And just all right, as you guys can see, I have three different recordings going on for the snare drum. As you guys know, I send this mixer out both of the mains. So I have a left channel and a right channel. And I'm recording 3 tracks, 1 mixer left, 1 mixer right, and then a stereo pair that I can work with. Once again, you always want to have a good source. Yeah, let's go ahead and let me mute my lapel really quickly. I'll give you guys a few drum rolls so that way you can really hear what's going on. right, guys. So as you saw, I'm getting a good amount of signal. Now, one of the things that you need to pay attention to is your clipping. When I hit the drum, as you guys can see, it jumps into the yellow, which is perfect. You want to do what is called dipping into the mustard. You don't want your signal to be clipping, which is in the red. So this is just like a traffic light, okay? Green, yellow, red. What you want is you want your signal to mostly be in the green, and only on its high points, you want it to touch the yellow. And normally, like I said, 16 dB or 16 decibel is roughly where that sweet spot is, which is why that's where I like to start. But as you guys can see, it dips into the yellow, but it's not super overpowering. So normally, like I said, normally I would be EQing, but we're not going to do that right now because there are some things that I would need to do with all the drum set, because I like getting my level set first, and then I like EQing everything together while everything is going, which is another very important thing. You don't just want to EQ or mix one instrument by itself. You want to do it all together so that way you know what's going on. Now, it's very, very important, and I probably should have done this before all the recording, but mic placement is key, very key. What I like to do is I like to have both my mics pointed at the center of the drum. So you can see my top mic here is angled right here for the center. And same with my bottom mic, it's angled at the center of the drum as well. Mic placement is very important because just like with a guitar cab, where you place the mic can greatly affect the signal that is, or not the signal, but can greatly affect the tone and the sound that you are getting. I prefer, and this is me, I prefer to have the center of the drum because that makes it uniform, and it's the best way to get, to me, I just like how it sounds. That's the best way to get the full range of the drum set. The main reason why I started the main reason why I started with the snare, as I stated before, the snare is, in my opinion, the most notable, the most iconic, and the most important part of the drum kit. Speaking of drum kits, just a funny story, or not really a funny story, but when we talk about drum kits, we normally talk about them in, at least how big they are, we normally talk about them in piece sizes, whether it's a 3-piece, a 4-piece, a 5-piece, or a 6-piece, or so on and so on. Now, that can be quite confusing. I myself particularly do not know exactly how they go about counting how many pieces are in the drum set, because sometimes they count the snare, sometimes they don't. So for example, if you have a snare, a tom, and a bass drum, they would consider that a 3-piece. But they would also consider 2 toms and a bass drum a 3-piece as well, even with a snare. So for me personally, and I'll show you guys this with my particular drum set that I have here. If the shell of the snare matches the shells of the other snares, as you guys can see, my snare drum has this nice crimson dark red shell. My other drums also have this exact same shell. So to me, if the snare shell matches the other drums, then I would count it as part of that drum set. If that snare shell does not match the other drum shells, then I would not count that as part of the drum set. But anyways, I started with this because it's the most important. So, going back over what we talked about today, we start off with the most important piece of the drum set because you want a good foundation. You want to make sure you get a good signal from the source. That's one of the reasons why I use two mics. Got the top mic and the bottom mic. You want to make sure that your signal levels are great, which is why you start. Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm not even so sure if I went into this or if I just glossed over it. But as you guys know, I started with mixing the gain and the low cuts on the board. Once I got this where I wanted it with the faders and everything, the signal source and whatnot, that is when you then go over to your input, your next input. So for me, it runs out. So for me, it runs out of my mixer and it runs down these cables all the way into the Focusrite 18i20. Now, as you guys can see here, I have my gain on this set just about 8 for channels 3 and 4, which my mixer is running into. Once I have that set, that is when we then move over to the faders and doing everything inside the DAW, or the DAW, the Digital Workstation Reaper. And once again, you want your signal to be just dipping into the yellow, just touching the yellow when you hit it, just like that. So yeah. Okay, so we talked about the signal flow, talked about having two mics, talked about starting with the snare. Now, as I stated, I will go into how I EQ everything, but that will be later on after I am done showing you guys how I mic up my toms, the kick, and the cymbals. But yeah, that's pretty much the first part of how I record drums with the snare. Like I stated, really stress, you don't want to do any of this right next to each other. You don't want to be mixing all of your stuff in the same room with your drum set. I'm only doing this right now because it's just by myself and it's a lot easier to do everything right here. Well guys, that's all the time we have for today. If you guys like this video, go ahead, hit that like and subscribe button. If you guys have any comments, questions, or ideas, go ahead and jot those down in the comment section down below. I do read all of my comments. Guys, I am trying to reach 500 subscribers. If you wouldn't mind helping me out by sharing this video or just by telling anyone to go check out my channel, I would really greatly appreciate it, and it helps me out a lot. Until next time, guys, I'm Black Boy, and remember, keep practicing.